And I'm back with more Breath of Fire 3. And, well, we've made it to one of the more arduous quests in the game. Not because it's difficult, but because it's longer. It's only as long as you make it. That being said, you do have to do this at least once. You have to do it. There's no way around it. It's known as the Desert of Death. So we've made our way past the factory, past Ragnir, and we're here with Horus in a camp next to the desert. What do you want to know about? This is very important, so listen carefully. Naturally, as you move through the desert, time passes. One day is 24 hours. 12-hour day, 12-hour night. You can keep track of time by counting your steps. You'll walk about 40 steps in an hour. Don't worry about this. Since you will only waste energy moving... This is where you worry about. Since you waste energy moving during the day, you should move at night when it's cooler. Anything else you want to know? You can find your way in the desert by looking at the stars. There are two ways of going to where you need to go. I will take the more, I'd say, standard approach. There is a direct route that I will mention as well that has worked for me, but I will just do the route the game suggests you use. This is the North Star. It always appears in the north, never moves. If you follow it, you're headed due north. This one's the false North Star. Sometimes appears at different heights depending on the day. It can fool you. Be careful not to mix it up with the real one. And this is the Evening Star. It always appears in the west, but not always in the same height and in the same place. If you're in the center of the desert, it'll be due west. If you lose track of where you are, you're done for. Make sure you keep an eye on your stats. One thing you need to be careful about is after breaking camp or a battle, make sure you check which direction you're facing. If you forget, you could end up in a lot of trouble. Anything else you want to know? You just gotta get out of the desert. First, follow the North Star to the north. Then, when you can see the Evening Star directly to the west, head east. Keep going east until you can no longer see the Evening Star. And then head north again for 3 nights. Or so, and you should be able to see the oasis. I'll write this down for you. I have heard that they mix up the directions in the camp, so do not follow those. You have to follow these ones. In fact, I'm gonna... There we go. Cut down my brightness a little bit. Okay. Anything else you want to know? Okay. I'll be waiting here. If you get in trouble, come back anytime. Water jug's full. Make sure you take some with you. You'll need it. So, you now have 16 servings of water. Based on how many days you're going to be at 7 days, you need at least 14. 14 to 18. Use the water jug to fill your canteen. Your canteen can hold 16 servings. 1 helping is enough for each member of the party to drink. Remember to drink before it's too late. If you don't, your max HP will go down permanently. That's bad. The Rakta here is your best friend. If you get lost, you can use him to come back. I shouldn't get lost, but still, nice to know. But yeah, this is, way easier than it sounds, but it's more annoying and confusing than it should be. Because in general, what you're doing is trying to fight and level up, but you don't have to, but you can. But anyway, are you leaving? Then you should wait until night and leave then. Good luck. So time does not move. But this is our basic setup. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The music is the best part about this. But get used to it, because this is the only thing you're going to hear other than battle themes. But yes, you're walking the directions that Horus gave you. When you get prompted, drink water. If you don't, then it will lower your HP. If you start at night, or start at daytime, you will lose it way quicker, and you probably get through your water in 1 day's worth, so you don't want to do that. It's specifically designed to do this at nighttime, and besides, following the stars is, well, possible at night. But yeah, as we said, we've got to go north 2 days, due east days, and I'll show you how this works. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you go 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what's going to happen after a while is the evening star is going to go up and down. But after you go east enough days, that will actually dip under the horizon, and that's your cue to actually go north again. And then you just keep going north. Certain points of the time, you'll actually see, you'll see in the distance, like some lights on the bottom of the horizon. Not stars, but lights. That is the oasis. But this game has a mirage mechanic, where around day 4 or 5, you'll see the oasis. It's a mirage. It's a neat touch. You're not supposed to see that. You're never supposed to see that. Speaking of which, I will grab my water. But yes, on day 7, the game will automatically prompt you, and that's how you know you've done it. So the game is nice enough to give you those prompts and not basically screw you over. The other main mechanic is when it is daytime, well, a couple more. When there's daytime, it will be harder to walk, and you're supposed to camp. So if you camp during the day, you rest up, you do your normal shit, and then it's nighttime again, and you do this all over again for however many days you need. You're going to be fighting as well. So the only real other thing other than walking is battles. So you'll be taken to a battlefield, and you could fight one time, you could fight as many battles as you want, really. I'm going to try and make this as quick a trip as possible, so it's going to be like one fight per battle. As soon as you walk out, or as soon as you walk out of camp, as Horus mentioned, you might be disoriented. So you're not going to be... You might be facing north, you might not be facing north, you could be facing, like, halfway, you could be facing, like, one off or something like that. So always face the North Star, get your bearings, and then go the direction you need to go. Oops. That's fine, I moved one step. But yeah, there you go, I moved a step. It's not the biggest deal. Now, the other method of doing this is to take 7 to 8 days walking towards the false North Star. I believe that works as well. I've done it once. I don't suggest it because I don't think you... I mean, you don't run out of water fast enough, but it is a risky proposition to do that. I made it work, and it does work, but I would rather just do the 2-3-2. Go what the game suggests, and you should be fine. You always work. The last thing I want to mention is that after you get through this place, you will be at the final dungeon. There's no more stuff. This is the final, like, area before the final dungeon, so you get fast travel after the fact. You only have to do this once. You never have to come back. So if you wanted to do... what's funny is that container yard where you got that radiance gene, that's where you're ending up. You get that, you open up the portal that allows you to never do this again. So there you go. If you do want to go back in the desert, you have an opportunity to go 2 different ways. 1, to get a royal sword, which we have, and 2, to get a life armor, which we also have. So this is the other way to get life armor and royal swords for Ryu and Rei, and I believe Gar can use the life armor too. But that is going from the oasis into the desert, or from the factory into the desert. Those are what's going on. After this spot, we're just walking. And so, I'm gonna have a little bit of time trying to fill as long a time as it takes, and this might just be one super long video. I don't know how long this is actually going to take me, because, let's face it, I'm holding a button. I'm holding a button until a prompt happens, so... Does that... I think what this could do, this is like one of those, like... Remember those grinding episodes I did where I talked about, like, silent protagonists and other things like that? I'm guessing this is a way to kind of do that, because there's nothing else to go on. I think the 2 things I want to talk about are the characters and their motivations, and then the way the game does their minigames. And I've said this before, but I'll elaborate more later. This guy's paralyzed because of the heat. You can actually help him with some ice spells or something. Or a healing herb or whatever remedy. Or you can just get rid of him. That's what I'm going to do. Because why not? He's there, he's free. And yes, this is a great grind spot, by the way. All told, you should be at like level 40 or something to beat the game, but... I don't know, I haven't really had to grind a whole bunch. And yeah, as I stated, you're offset every time you do this, so... Okay. But yes. So the first thing I want to mention is the character motivations thus far and why they're on this journey, because in games you always have to have a strong motivation. And I don't think the game does a great job of giving as many people proper motivations, or at least the reason that you should have been on this journey. And I suffer from this with D&D all the time, trying to find a character whose motivations still fit with the party so they're not like wasting my time or wasting their time. Because I know it's meant to be fun, but at the same time, you're thinking this as a justified story. You have to have a reason that fits rather than just, oh, you're trying to do class or whatever, and you fail, and your character needs a reason to stay with the party out of the goodness of their heart, or they're looking for a thing, or they're getting a revenge narrative, or whatever. They have to have a justified reason that they're willing to stick it out with these people for this reason. And I've made my thoughts known on Ryu quite a bit. These guys know. These guys know. Tornado, I do not like that. I'm gonna want to get rid of them. But yeah, I made my thoughts known on Ryu quite a bit, and I understand why silent protagonists are a thing, and they've done as good a job with Ryu as they can under the circumstances. Like, he's the dork in the front of the party, he's the brood, he's the guy. And Dragnir was there as you are our savior, you're the last of your kind who has the power because Myria got rid of us. Again, I'm not going to say why she did, but the game has alluded to that, but now we know why Ryu has such a burden placed on him. And again, I think the game does an okay job of doing what it can with the limitations of silent protagonists in general, trying to give him as much like backstory so that you feel like you're Ryu. You're on a journey to save your people. You're on a journey to sort of avenge your people. I get that. Makes perfect sense to me. And Momo actually hit. That's nice. But then we get to Gar. And I'm going in order of importance to the story. That's a lot of experience, by the way. Ray learned death. How quaint. I'm going in order of importance to the story so far. So Gar has the strongest motivation. I mean, there is no doubt about it. He knows Myria, or well, he doesn't know her, but he wants to meet her. He is the sole reason that this exists. And hey, they let me... He's the sole reason this entire story takes place. Because it's one thing to go from the Ray Tipo thing and look for Ray and Tipo, and then all of a sudden you're in this war. After the Bailey Sunder thing, the Brood War, and Myria takes center stage. And Gar is the center of that. But they do a very good job of building him up as a mysterious character who's helping the party for a reason. At the same time, not letting on that at Angel Tower, he wants to kill you. He's under the assumption, not because Myria told him, but because people of Urkin who believe in her told him this is what should be done. This is what has to be done. This is all that can be done. This is all he knows. He was blessed with the power to kill dragons. He doesn't know why. He doesn't question it until it's too late. And then Dace comes by and basically browbeats him, and he and Geist are like, well, we don't give a fuck. Why should we give a fuck? You're some lady we don't know. Or you're some lady who's like some crackpot, and turns out she knows way more than she thinks. Because she knows fucking Myria, so she'd know. But they don't know. And that obliviousness is what actually gives Gar some motivation and some character in the second half of the game. Because it makes perfect sense. And this is something that happens with religion all the time, and as somebody who's not really a religious person, but I'm not going to tell people not to believe in something. But if you want to believe in God, that's your choice. Gar, being this paragon of Myria, because of the Urkin people, he's a champion. It's all he knows, and he doesn't question it halfway through. And then all of a sudden, he does. He travels with Ryu and the party and begins to think, well, what the hell am I doing? These people never fought back. They never wanted to kill me. And even now that you've basically caused genocide, he can't be forgiven, but he understands, hey, what can I do to atone? And the only thing I can really do is help Ryu bring him to God, because that's what he was supposed to do anyway. And then, well, he wants an answer to the question. That's what's really driving the whole game at the halfway point, is meeting with Myria, who, again, is not revealed until, like, an hour ago in game time. But you have this god who is basically halfway across the world, does want to be left alone to her own devices. And the party goes through so much. They're walking through a goddamn godforsaken desert to meet with a god they don't know, and they don't understand why she exists or what she's doing. Gar, I mean, it's not like he's going to, like, become a friend of the brood or anything, because there's not many left of them, but he understands that, well, before I die, I want to at least understand why I did everything I did and get the second side. Because all he knew for his entire life, which spans, what, 500 years at this point, was, I don't know jack shit about shit. Because they taught me this is what I do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. And now, he thinks, was it worth it? Was killing my friend, or was seeing my friend kill, and then seeing this avenging brood character kill my former comrade and Gazed, is this all worth a damn? So he is there, one, to drive the plot forward, because Ryu can't do that himself. The game frames it as if he does, but he doesn't. Gar is the framing device of this entire game. And I've always respected that about the character, because he's a strong-willed guy, and he's very, very fucking strong in-game and in combat. But he's willing to look at life and understand that his faith is shaken. Everything he knew could have been a lie, could have been a misunderstanding, could have been a paranoia, who knows? And he just wants that answer. And he's doing his damnedest to get it. So he is basically bringing everybody along with him. Now, why he isn't the main character? Well, it's not his game. It's called Breath of Fire. Ryu is the main character, for better or for worse. I've said my piece. I really don't think he is. But Gar, as the framing device of the game, is very important. And I've always enjoyed that, and I always think Gar is one of the main reasons I always come back to this game. Ray, being, I'd say, the third most important. Note, I did not say Nina, because I'll get to that in a minute. Ugh, it's the butt volcanoes, they're back. Miss me! Do I know how a gigantic rock monster was able to do that? No. I don't know if I'm going to do a lot of damage to these guys. Ow! I mean... Oh man, air raid? Fuck you. Hey, you missed me. Well... This might take a while. You know, I could just do this. But yeah, this actually gives me a good chance to talk about Ray, because I don't think he drives the story. But he's one of the main reasons why the story makes so much sense, because his act of revenge is so understandable. And it's you know, side plot one, but it ends up becoming the main thrust of the narrative for a while. And yeah, that did way better. Because Ray was an orphan. I think anybody can understand that. Ray is by himself, and Ray can't really do much, and... Crap. Okay, good. I still got it. Okay, alright, I killed him. Good. But... Ray's understandable in the sense that... he took Tipo in first, and that's where the story started. At the same time, he also took in Ryu, not because he really wanted to, but because, well, he's a nice enough guy that he's not just gonna leave somebody to die. And then he takes up the mantle as that unspoken, kind of unsure father figure of the group. He's not that much older, maybe 2 or 3 years older than them, but you know, it's a tried story. The older person takes up the mantle of the big brother character, and you know, they slowly build a family, and it makes sense. And then this mob, again, I don't think the mob specifically is affiliated with Myria at all. They were just a mob, right? So Mikba and Bailio and Sunder are basically like the first third of the game. But that tragedy is his fault. He let Tipo do something stupid. He let his stupidity as a teenager blind him to the reality of the situation. And for all he knew, Ryu and Tipo were dead. Now, Ryu, we know, at least, is alive. But, I mean, you have to consider, like, what was this, 5-year time skip? There's no real guarantee he'd ever see them again. So how does he process it? Well, one, he has this innate, like, berserk mode power that, as we've seen, is pretty fucking intense. So he has that in his back pocket to just basically murder people. He spends 5 years murdering people, just endlessly. Is it the right thing to do? I don't think so. But he doesn't know that, and he doesn't know the consequence of his actions. So now we go to the east. And unfortunately for him, he took a beating. He went from the snot-nosed yet still kind of, you know, responsible-ish scamp. And now he's basically, like, hardened and, like, angry and angsty. He still has that immaturity that, you know, a late teenager would, like, early young adult would have in the situation. So he just ups and says, okay, well, I didn't know that Bailio and Sunder got destroyed by Ryu. I'm just gonna go after everybody else. And he still is just like, well, I don't know what to do now. I mean, I'm tagging along because Ryu is my friend, and you're telling me, oh, there's an overarching plot, there's this overarching character who basically owns everything and decides everything, and that's not right. What kind of god let me suffer so much tragedy? Why would you let me do this? You know, it's kind of that question. It's like, why would a god do this to their people? You know, I've heard that before. Again, it's not something I want to get into. This is not a religious conversation. This is purely Ray's character motivation here. Why would a god let a mob exist to torture my family? That's what his story is. And he's basically saying, well, I have this power, what do I use it for? That's why he's alone. And he said as much in the Black Ship. Because otherwise he would have kept just killing people, kept just attacking people indiscriminately. We gave him a sort of purpose. And of course, he's still under the hope that, you know, Tipo might be alive somewhere. I mean, Ryu wants to see Tipo again, I'm sure. That's why this whole thing started. So, Ray doesn't drive the plot forward, but his internal motivation and the things that happen to him are very strong, too. So it's very easy to understand why he would be along for the ride and still want to protect Ryu out of just basically guilt. He's guilt-tripped, but not in the same way Gar is, but guilt-tripped and vengeful. That's the slight difference. Gar is not vengeful at all. He's morose and, like, unsure of himself. Ray's unsure of himself, but he is vengeful to a fault, and hates that about himself. But it's a strong understanding, and I definitely get it, and it makes perfect sense. Which, unfortunately, brings us to Nina. And this is where the game falls flat for me. Okay, so remember I gotta go until that... I gotta go until that evening star goes into the horizon. Nina should, for all intents and purposes, every Breath of Fire game be a driving force in the plot. I mean, if you're going to go through the point of making a character as iconic as Ryu, you better make it worth my time, right? Oh, fuck. My main problem with Breath of Fire 3 has always been Nina, because they do a very, very bad job of justifying, and he keeps on trying to kick my ass. They do a very, very bad job of trying to justify, haha, you suck, Nina's inclusion. She doesn't have some, I mean, where do I go with this? The good-natured soul who does things for the goodness of her heart and all that, like, that's fine. You need that kind of bastion of hope in a normal game, like say a Danganronpa or whatever. Like, her normality would have been a strong feature to me, because in a land of crazies, the normal person actually stands out. That's not what happens here. Nina's here because she was a dumbass, and she let Bailey and Sunder escape. That was her first problem. And as even in her early years, when she was very determined, that's the one thing I will say about Nina 3, is that she's very determined despite how stupid she is, and stupid and naive. At least she's willing to admit she's stupid and naive and trying to better herself. But the game confuses that for character depth so much. They confuse the fact that Nina herself is the second most important character in the Breath of Fire franchise, and kind of skirts around the whole, well, why should I give a shit? What is Nina here for? A lot of the time she ends up doing things that make the party waste their time or screw around doing stupid things. Like, yeah, she wants to help Ryu find Tipo. That's fine. That's cool. And you could justify it by saying, okay, she loves him and she wants to go with him. But they don't even go that far. Right? They say, well, he's a protector of hers and whatever. But every single situation, whether it's Rapala with Bade or, you know, just in general dealing with the Windia situation over and over again, it always feels like Nina is trying to be the center of attention. It hasn't really earned that right, because Ryu and Gar, and Ray to a lesser extent, have so much more, well, reasonable expectations that Nina, who honestly should have more going for her doesn't. So her character in less favorable terms is basically the spoiled princess who doesn't feel like a spoiled princess but wants to help everybody out and do that fine. And you get, what, one scene with the queen, and you go, well, I'm not just a princess, I'm Nina. And then you get that scene at the Lost Shore, and it's, well, okay. Was that enough to justify Nina being Nina? I really don't know. And good thing I didn't move too far. So, I think they took what could have been a really big character and turned her into a minor character who has aspirations, or at least feels like she should be, given her billing. They don't give her any importance that really justifies, okay, she doesn't love Ryu. I mean, she likes him, but it's not romantic, as far as I know. It's hinted at best. She wants to find God, mostly because she's the good character. She's the nice girl. I mean, is that good enough reason to tag along with a bunch of idiots? And, you know, does she have some inner qualm and inner problem that I don't know about? No. The game didn't give me that. So that's why I'm always kind of leery about Nina in general. No, Nina 3. And I will contrast that, before going to Momo, I will contrast that by saying I don't think Nina 1 drives the plot, and I don't think Nina 2 in Breath of Fire 2 drives the plot either. But in Breath of Fire 2, without going into spoilers, she's basically in the Rei/Gar position quite a fair bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Nina 2, unlike Nina 3, who's the normal, cheerful, dopey, naive bitch, Nina 2 is this downtrodden, almost bullied, almost tragic, scarred figure. And while she doesn't drive the plot, necessarily, the stuff that happens to her is on the Rei scale. The stuff that happens to her is on the Gar scale. To where she feels important. She acts important. You want to, you know, feel like she should be protected, or, you know, in most terms, help the party, you know, justify her existence and not be bullied or whatever. Nina 4, as we'll see when we get to that, well, the entire game. Fucking phone, I'm trying to talk here. Nina 4, to a much better extent than Nina 3, is even more so. Nina 4 basically starts the game. Nina 4 remains the head of the party in the remainder of the game. And the driving plot, which we will see, involves her almost to a fault. Yeah, you have the whole Ryu is a dragon thing and whatever, because you kind of have to, because Breath of Fire! But Nina 4 drives the plot. There is no way around that. They don't overdo it, but they do a good enough job of saying, well, I get why Nina's here. I understand why I need to see this journey through to the end, because she's looking for something. I won't say what, but let's just say she's looking for something, and it's so goddamn important. Well, goddamn, I get it. Nina 3 does not have that. She's not looking for anything important. She's not helping Ryu for any other reason than she's the nice girl. She's just some dumbass princess who doesn't want to be labeled as a princess. I've never really felt that. And I think what's also frustrating is it'd be one thing if the character motivations were weak, but the character itself were strong in battle to justify it, like the game mechanics gave you something. But, as I've stated, every time I've had Nina in the party, she's always let the party down. And it's not necessarily her fault. It's a fault of the game mechanics. Because Breath of Fire, at least Breath of Fire 3, has always prioritized physical attackers over magic. And Nina's whole thing is magic and agility. And that's great for clearing mobs, but again, it's the Naoto situation. What good's of clearing a mob if you have to switch her out for a party member that can actually do something in a battle? Because then she's relegated, well, her magic's not going to do much damage, or enough damage to justify it when I could just punch a dude for 100 damage, when her spells are at best 100 for 7 AP or something. So then you're left with, she's a healer, but she can't really do that. Then what about, so she's not a healer, so that's going against her. She's not a support mage, though she should be. Her whole secondary attack are debuffs, which really don't do anything and work well enough. She's not faster than Ray, so that's against her. She's not physically strong, so she can't attack worth a damn. So the spells that she could use to attack are left to is their weakness. And then she's squishy as shit. So the game actively goes against making her useful in battle. So it, in essence, makes Nina 3 one of the worst characters I've ever had to deal with. Not because I don't understand it, but because they do a terrible job of giving her character motivation to counteract the fact that in battle, she's just as bad. She doesn't do anything that another character can't do better. And she ends up becoming a waste because of her name, you know, and I came into this first, so I didn't know that. But knowing what I know about Nina going forward, and even going back in the series, is like, well, what the fuck, game? Like, you couldn't have given her one thing that was above anybody else? So she ends up just feeling like a waste of space. And to add to the frustration, they've spent so many times needling the player as you're supposed to care about her. Like, you're supposed to think that she wants to get stronger. She doesn't. You want to think she doesn't want to meet the castle. That's her own main motivation. And it's like, well, we will learn about the Brood. She's a side player in Ryu's story. Why? Like, why does she care? Does she love him? No, she hasn't said that. And to make it more annoying, they always put her into the middle of the party as if she means something. Like, every time there's a cutscene or a battle or a whatever, she's just like, oh, I'm in the party now. It's because the game wants you to give a shit, and I don't. I don't give a shit about Nina 3. Would you stop forcing her in the party? Let me have the characters I want. If I want to use Nina as a change of pace character in a different playthrough, cool. But under normal circumstances, I don't do that, because I'm not stupid. The game wasn't well designed enough to make magic viable, and even if it was, Ryu can do her job, Momo can do her job, and she can't do Ray or Gar's job, so what the fuck does she do? Nothing! So just, she feels like a fucking proverbial, like, wet blanket. She just feels like a wet blanket. Every time I get away from her, the game tries to put her back into some stupid storyline or give her a reason to exist or drive some dumb side quest or something. Midway through the game, it's not as bad. Like, when they grow up, it's not nearly as frustrating. And then you finally see, okay, she is trying to justify her reasons. But by then, the damage was done. the damage was done in the childhood era. And then by the time she actually gets some modicum of respect, it's way too late because the game mechanics have already passed her by. So she's important in name recognition only, which really sucks. But, which is sad because she's better than Momo. From a character perspective, Momo sucks. And I like her. I like her nerd look. I like her bazooka of doom. I like the fact that she's basically what Nina should have been all along. Basically capable of doing anything in magic-based. But also, like, physically... Like, if you'd given Nina, like, Momo's spell set to Nina, and just had Momo be, like, a support healer and damage healer, that would have been one thing. But the fact that the game is designed that you can actually give Momo magic spells and she's just as good as Nina at it, the fact that you can mold her into pretty much anything, whether it be an attacker, defensive character, whatever, it's kind of sad that Nina exists. And that's what sucks. It's because I like Momo a lot as a character, but her motivation sucks godly balls. When you meet her, she just kind of like, my father's the greatest, my father's the best, my father's everything, you should have met him, he was great. And we do that for like half the game. They later on, they get around to actually fleshing that out, and that side story is actually really good. That plant section is kind of neat, and they give Momo a bit more. So I think that's nice, but in the end, it doesn't like help the party. It's a means to an end, and then you learn about Momo a bit more, but you don't really do much with her after that. She hangs around because she just wants to know what technology. She's the tech nerd. She does the tech knowledge, and she learns the tech stuff, and it's like, okay, well, alright. Her whole motivation after the plant is, where did machines come from? Why did God create machines? I mean, that's cool, but they don't really expand on it. It's just, oh my god, look at this machine, it's so amazing! Is it what I'd call amazing characterization? Not really. It's more that it's something. She's a fully fleshed character, but I don't think her character motivations for meeting God stack up to the rest of the people. Just like Nina's don't. And, well, Peiko, to this point, doesn't do shit. He's a byproduct of a mutant and a plant, so he's a side story in Momo's whole thing. And he's just there to be like a mascot. So it's like, what the fuck is he doing here? So there's that one. And I'm not saying Peiko isn't good in battle. I've used him in battle. I didn't this playthrough, but goddamn is he good when you put him in the right spot. And you put him in the right role, he kicks the fuck out of people. But in the grand scheme of things, has he contributed anything to the plot so far? No. He's just there. He's there for fun because he looks weird and does weird shit in battle. It's not what I'd consider great character, because he has none. He's the baby of a dead mutant. That's basically what he is. Why are we carrying him along? I don't know. And there's that Mirage, by the way. Don't go there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm gonna work my way through. I'm gonna keep going. Okay, it's basically at horizon now. Look at that. That's at horizon. So now we can just follow the North Star and go. But yeah, the oasis now over there is a mirage, so you don't want to go there. But to balance everything out, I think the parties themselves aren't the best. And it does speak to the weaknesses that Breath of Fire 3 has as a game. That it ended up being a bit of a disappointment that half the party really doesn't need to exist. Or at least exists solely for game mechanics purposes rather than actually being an interesting character. I don't hate them, outside of Nina, but I don't even hate Nina from the perspective of I hate her as a character. I hate her because the game didn't justify her doing anything as a character. That says a lot. Because I think it can work. I know, not everybody in a game has to mean everything. Like, even say something like Final Fantasy 16, like, or 6, what's 16? Final Fantasy 6. Is Umaru important? No. Is Gogo important? No. But they're still party members. They're more there for the fun than anything else. But much like Final Fantasy VI, the strength of the game's main characters still outweighs the weakness that I find in some other ones. Like Celeste, Terra, Locke, Edgar, Sabin. Like, that's all you needed in Final Fantasy VI. God willing, that's amazing storytelling. And what happens to Ray and Gar, and to a lesser extent Ryu, because by proxy, well, stuff happens to him, but he's not really reacting to it. It still works. The game still works because the mystery of Myria's intentions and everything driving the plot, and there's always something happening. For better or for worse, the game doesn't screw around with telling you things. It gives you stuff to do. Whether it's always good or not is up to interpretation, because they do a lot of shit that doesn't work. But the plot works on a very basic and yet still, like, emotional level. Because the things that happen in the game don't shy away from tragedy and loss and discovering one's intentions and things. And I think that's why this game works so well, is because they do lots of things great, but they don't do them perfectly. And that's probably why, outside of the name being, well, not Final Fantasy or, you know, whatever, that's why this franchise never really hit big, is because it's big enough and it's always thought of fondly, but it's never like, oh my god, you gotta go out of your way to play this, it's the perfect game. No. It has problems the more you look at it. But it's the perfectly serviceable, like, C+ to B- video game, right? It does what it needs to do, and it doesn't fuck around, and it gives you exactly what you want, if you're willing to overlook some stupid shit that happens in it. I still think this is a better game overall than some of the Final Fantasy games that have been released. Not because Final Fantasy didn't try, but because this was a solid game. It's just what an RPG, could be and can be, and works fine. And when you invest in it, you get it, at least to me, you get an emotional response to it. The same can't be said for some of the minigames. Because I kind of wish this game just had the fishing in the fairy village and then dropped everything else. Because I said this before, the Final Fantasy VII had this problem too, where they gave you minigames just because it's like they they went to the drawing board and said, "Oh, hey, here's an idea. How do we put this into the game?" Well, here you go. Let's chop some wood, and let's go find this thing. Let's go get to bait, and let's go make that a thing. Let's go over here and go fishing. And, well, the fishing is amazing. It's cathartic and involved and yet complex because you have all these little pieces of equipment and things you can build. Final Fantasy 15, it's Final Fantasy 15-esque, right? It's very familiar with Final Fantasy 15 in a way. Slightly different mechanics, but as good if you dive deep into it. Uh-oh. Bye! But yeah, outside of the fairy village being a nice little, like, story and then side quest, and outside of the fishing minigame being really, really fucking awesome, there's not a lot of these Goodbye! There's not a lot to these minigames that do anything. Because the bait storyline took way too long. And again, started because Mina said, "What the fuck, we're not doing anything, let's just help them." Like, why? It's dumb. Why should we help Bait? Because Mina wants to? It's dumb. By the way, Meteor, get fucked. Well, at least the cactus got wrecked. But I mean, the less said about the Shishu storyline, and because the Shishu storyline was, hey, let's come up with a stupid minigame. Okay, so let's go find some stuff in the overworld, and then let's go fishing and find a thing, and let's go do the other thing, and yeah, my mic died when we were doing that, but it's like, why am I doing the vinegar minigame? Why am I getting the vinegar? Why am I doing this stuff to help some dork? It's like small little side things that don't add up to anything special. It's like especially because you come off the Geist storyline on such a high, and then you do something like that, and it breaks the monotony. And sure, it's supposed to be funny, I guess, but this game doesn't really do humor very well. It's not meant to be a humorous game. So the Shisu storyline's dumb. The anglerfish thing was worse. Pulling the rope to tug of war. I'm not so bad usually on that. So that one was on me. But again, why are we salvaging parts? It was a way to justify a boss fight, I guess. And to justify the parts being there, but it's a fucking beach full of parts. I'm pretty sure they could have just floated in on their own, and we could have just done that without the boss fight. So the angler boss fight was kind of useless, as was the whole minigame to begin with. I think it's more, they came up with a lot of, like, interesting ideas but didn't implement them well, or they didn't work in the story, or they tried to work in the story and work in the location they were at, but they didn't really do anything. And instead of making them fun and involved, like the fishing minigame, they made them, well, mandatory. It's like random encounters. If the game wasn't based in random encounters, I wouldn't be nearly as fucking annoyed by it, because that's a convention of the game genre that thankfully we've slowly gotten away from. But even by 1995, they got through that. Chrono Trigger proved you didn't need random encounters. Final Fantasy VI had a fucking no random encounters item halfway through the game. Bravely Default made it so you didn't have random encounters, so I can't use that as an excuse. Just having a minigame for the sake of having a minigame and making it a mandatory feature of the game doesn't mean I want to enjoy it. It breaks up the game flow, but if it's a piece of shit idea, it's a piece of shit idea. And every time you replay it, you're reminded of how stupid most of these ideas are. So the game itself ends up feeling lesser than it should. Because much like Final Fantasy VII, you're doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. I understand the allure of breaking the monotony, but when you have to do something like this to justify getting to Myria, especially after going through the Black Ship storyline, it tells you what you're doing. But remember, this is mandatory, and we've been going an hour. So, this is the longest episode I've ever made. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. So, I've had to do a whole bunch of stuff to justify an hour's worth of content because I'm walking in a fucking line. So, I will actually call the episode here, because I think we're going to make it to a boss. Because God willing, the Desert of Death is a thing. But hopefully, if nothing else, I did it right. And we only have maybe 1 or 2 more days left. And we'll cut this episode here. And then the next time we will get to the episode where we actually get to the final dungeon proper, or at least justifying the location of it. So I know this was a very, very, very long episode. I do not expect people to agree with everything I was saying. I don't expect people to necessarily enjoy watching an hour-long like discourse on Breath of Fire 3, but maybe if you do, cool. Because how else was I going to get through this mess of an area without justifying it? But I guarantee you, until say a final dungeon or something in another game, I don't expect an area to be this long ever again. But that was the Desert of Death, everybody. Hopefully I at least made it somewhat tolerable, and I gave you a sort of mini review of Breath of Fire 3 from a perspective of somebody who does enjoy the game, but understands its faults, and hopefully does a good enough job justifying them so that, you know, you don't just renege on it and think, it is what it is. I mean, if you love the game, great. I certainly do. But this is the perfectly serviceable C+ to B- RPG. It does everything well if you can get through some of the stupid shit. Just like the Desert of Death. See you guys next time.